What do you think? Awesome. Super happy I was able to show that. It's awesome on the big screen. So I'll jump into my presentation in a minute, and we'll try to keep it fast because I know we're running a little bit late. But so I did want to talk about the cool experience for me is I'm the first outsource manager at Blizzard. So Blizzard has never outsourced any in-game art assets before until I showed up about 3 years ago, and I've been slowly helping Blizzard to expand their network of talented individuals. So it's kind of fun for me to be on a project that talks about heroes from all over the world uniting to fight the evil, robots and everything, while at the same time I'm tapping into an awesome worldwide network of amazing folks. So you guys are part of that. So number one, I'm super honored to be here, and I'm super happy that you guys are a part of this, what you guys are up to now. So I know this is the first year of this, but I hope this continues. I think there's some really good stuff happening. Okay, so the talk today is about thinking big and talking about external development and how we're making Overwatch with, again, this network of talented individuals like you guys all over the world. So I think I dropped this. I'm going to break it. We'll see if it works. All right, we're going to do it old school. All right, so to kick things off, I had a few questions. Who here is a student or is looking to get into the game industry? Cool, good percentage. All right, so of the folks in the game industry, who is who is on the side of game development where you possibly you contract outsourcing services, you find other people to help work for your project? Who's on that side? All right, cool. And then who's on the side of you provide services to game development studios? So, awesome, cool, it's a good mix. So I'll try to customize this as much as possible. There's a little bit that's focused on people that sort of buy outsourcing services like myself. But what I'm hoping to do is even if you're on the side where you provide a service, I'm hoping that you can encourage the people that you work with to maybe implement some ideas and make sure that we have a sort of a fair working environment. My goal at the end of the day is to make this a really awesome sort of ecosystem for everyone, both people on my side and everyone sort of providing the service, and even the students that are heading into this industry. Okay, cool. And really, at the end of the day, the goal with a lot of this is to build trust, both from the people that we work with remotely, as well as the people that I work with internally. I don't build any of the art myself, and my team can build the art, but at the same time, I need the internal development team to trust my group like they would anyone. And then my group trusts the external artists. So it's really about trust. I am very passionate about what I do in this world, this ecosystem again, but it's very important that in your own work is to, yes, have a dream, but also have a plan to execute it. That's huge. And the next thing I'm just referring to the sort of the outsourcing world and creating, working with external teams to make art for a game. This is not a silver bullet. So anyone that's inside a studio that's like, oh, we'll just outsource that. That's not the right way to approach that. It doesn't work for everything. It's not this like magical box that just works. It's a bunch of talented people that are all over the world. So the next one is learn to say no. So it's a lot of times people come to me and say, hey, can we do this in about 2 weeks? I want like 5 characters in 2 weeks. No, that doesn't work. So a lot of that's very important. If I said yes, that would get me in a lot of trouble and just cause a lot of headache for everyone involved. So really in my position, and I'm hoping if you guys are in this position as well, if someone asks you to do something, it's okay to say no. And even for me, when I talk to studios out there that I'm looking to work with, and I ask, hey, can you do animations, or hey, can you do particle effects? No is absolutely an appropriate answer. It's totally okay. I'd much rather hear no than yes, and then we mess up later on down the line. And the last one is, this is the DISC psychological profile system. We do this at work, so everyone that comes into Blizzard goes through the DISC, and it basically measures how you think and behave at work. And so I'm a really high C, so that means I like data and charts, so get ready, this is gonna be awesome. So I'm super nerdy. Okay, so general overview. So a quick tell you about what I do. So my team at Blizzard, I sort of function as, my background's in art, but I function as a producer. my team is essentially a bunch of lead artists that are responsible for working with external artists around the world to implement art into Overwatch specifically. The master plan is we grow and help out other teams at Blizzard, but right now we're starting with Overwatch. So to do this, do it effectively, first up is do your homework. So know who's out there in the world, and a whole bunch of other information that we'll go into in a little bit. Team structure, how I set up my team for success in terms of how to provide the best service to my external talented artists, as well as how I can best be of the service to the internal team making Overwatch. And the next one is brain science. So this is going to be sort of funny and a little bit off the wall, but this is don't forget that we're all human. Like we all have to carry this weird organic thing into work. We're not just machines. Anyone that sort of looks at a production plan and thinks that, 1 + 1 = 2, that works all the time. We're human, it doesn't work that way. So I think we have to take that into account and not forget that we're all creative-driven humans, not robots. All right, so next one. So the first one is do your homework. Spend it smart. So this one is, I want to make sure that when I'm going into any area, this is a very select, I took the top 100 people that I've been in touch with and just sort of mapped it out on Google Maps. But the idea here is to just show that when I'm going into an area, I want to make sure that I know what a competitive market price is. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but it's super important to be in touch with, some areas are more expensive and some areas are not as expensive, but know what that is so that you can sort of ask questions based on what that is, because you want to be fair in this process. So I'm super happy the triangle came up in the last talk, because this is a piece by Colin Harmon. He's mainly focused on the advertising side of things, but I love his piece of art. So, it's fast, it's cheaper, it's great, and a lot of times people demand all three. That's not possible. So when I grew up in games, it was pick two. And now that I'm in games for 13 years, I'm getting old, I would say you pick one. Pick one and focus on that, and be flexible with the other ones. But be honest about what your main goal is. Okay, do I need this fast? Then it's not gonna be cheap and it's not gonna be that good. Okay, do I need it cheap? Then it's gonna be super slow and it's not gonna look that good. Or do you need it great? Then it's gonna be expensive and it's not gonna be very fast. So just be honest about what you're getting yourself into. Let's see. Yeah, and so just don't make your decisions based on any single one of those. Be honest about what your sort of main driving factor is. So the next part is usually when I'm working with, if I'm looking at studios to work with, sometimes I'll do a bid situation that's sort of just, hey, give me an example. This is not I'm actually going to build this asset right now, but a mock bid, just as an exercise for me to sort of get to know their studio a little bit better. So this is a slide sort of speaking a little bit to people that are buying outsourced services, and actually people providing services as well. There are some teams out there that have a MDR, essentially a daily rate. So some teams out there have a very nice low daily rate, and some teams have a much higher daily rate based on exchange rates. There's all sorts of factors that go into this, right? That sort of goes into the market rate that I'm talking about. So some have low, some have high. But what you have to take into account is that's not the only number you should be looking at. So how long does it take a team to make something? So maybe one team is slow, maybe one team is fast. At the end of the day, it means the same thing. So I think I've heard a lot of people in my situation go like, oh, well, what's their day rate? It's sort of a silly question for me to answer, because at the same time, that sort of doesn't matter because you're missing half of the equation. So if you're a talented artist, don't let your customers get hung up on your daily rate. Say, you know what? Yes, my daily rate is a little more expensive than the other guys in the city, but I'm twice as fast, so you actually save money with me. So I think just when you're talking to someone or when you're buying services, make sure you're looking at the full equation. All right. So then when I'm buying services, there's two ways to do it. There's fixed price assets, so I pay X amount of money for this asset, or there's time and materials, where I buy your time. I buy a week of your time, a month of your time. Each sort of side of these contracts have strengths and weaknesses. The fixed price assets, pre-production is huge. If you mess up your pre-production, you will mess up the whole entire contract, because what you're doing is I'm paying only this amount of money for an asset that I request to be built. And if I don't tell you enough information about it, there's going to be extra iteration, there's going to be a whole bunch of mistakes that happen, and it's going to be all my fault. So if I mess that up, it's going to go bad, and it's not going to be anyone's fault but my own. Though it is efficient, if I do provide the right amount of information, it works out very well in terms of here's an asset. So if you're really good and you go fast, you make extra money. If you took a little bit extra iteration, then maybe you didn't make as much profit as you were hoping for. But at the end of the day, these contracts are very efficient in terms of the way they function. Another sort of downside is they're rigid. Is if I ask you to build 10 vehicles and then my designer comes to me and says, well, damn, now I need 20 crates. Sorry, the contract isn't set up for that. So there's a little bit of a downside to it because I can't change, sort of the good side is I can't change my mind, and the bad side is I can't change my mind. So it depends on what you're looking for. With time and materials, it's longer term, which is nice. I like to, with the people I work with, I like to sort of invest. This is a long-term relationship, even if it's an asset-based contract. For time and materials, it is a very long-term thing. Well, I'll buy 6 months of your time. I'll buy a year's worth of your time. It's flexible. So if I change my mind halfway through an asset, I can say, you know what? As much as I really wanted those 10 cars, it sounds like we're changing direction. Okay, now we need to make a bunch of crates. And that's cool because you're going to get paid for your time either way. And it's the same thing as the flexible process and flexible output. Oh, I think in the flexible process, a little bit what I was speaking to there is, if you find a better way to do things, awesome. If I find a better way to do it, it's very flexible all the way across the board because all we're looking at is, you spent a day on this, cool. And then as long as we're working together and we stay in sync, that we both believe in, yeah, that day was worth it, that was cool. Not all days will be like that, but that's okay. All right, in general, I like to start with short fixed price contracts. And then a lot of people are gonna look at me and go, wait, well that kind of sucks because that guarantees me no sort of safety. You're only asking me to build 1 or 2 assets, so why is that worth it? And I think it's worth it for both sides, and I'll mention a little bit why. Have you guys done any agile development with sprints and stuff like that? So I won't go too much into detail, but there's the idea of where there's a user story provided, where I'll just tell you about the feature that I want. I want the character to run or jump, or I want a car. But think about the contract as a sprint in terms of, I'm asking you to build a car, here is the specs on it, go, you build that car for me, and then the nice part is at the end of that contract, you can go, hey, you know what, I spent a lot of time on that car, we need to talk about price. So the cool part is if you told me it would cost $1 and you spent $2 worth of time on it, you can say, Grayson, I lost a bunch of money on that, we need to talk about this for the next contract. But there's a lot of there's a lot of opportunity for you to approach me and say, let's do it better next time. So the next contract, let's fix it. And I'm all for that. I want to make it a good experience. Let's see, it controls feature creep. So the cool part about the fixed price contracts is I can't change my mind. So when I tell you to build 10 cars, you're gonna build 10 cars. I can't change my mind halfway through and go, hey, you know what, it's crates. Nope, sorry, you asked me to build 10 cars, we're doing that. So the cool part is I won't even approach you with that. I'll say, you know what, we're locked in for 10 cars, let's build those, and then move on. Next one is a controls iteration. Is if we sort of agreed that you were gonna spend 15 days on this asset, and I'm at day 16 and still asking for iteration, it's a great opportunity to go, hey, we talked about 15 days, we're right at that point, we need to wrap this up. So it encourages sort of honesty in the process. And the last one I really like because, so I've been in games for a long time and always in-house, people sort of forget that time, design ideas equal time. Time is sort of, they're paying you to sit in this desk. So to me in my world, every day that I work with someone costs money. And so I have to think about every single day what it costs for me to ask for another revision or for me to ask for this. So I sort of like these contracts because it forces me to go back to my boss and my designer and say, hey, you know what? We've iterated on this thing like 10 times. It doesn't make monetary sense. We should probably stop. So I get to be the voice of reason and use money to sort of motivate that conversation. All right, and the next thing I like to do is I like to blend the contracts to offer as much sort of predictability as I can with the teams that I'm working for. I like you and I want to keep working with you, so I want to offer a sort of a smooth plan, both in terms of working with me and so that you know what money's coming, that sort of thing. So we'll start the first contract, and if everything's going well, if you like the way I provide feedback, and if I like the work that's being produced, then we ramp up the second contract so that we blend them together so it's not just one contract falls off, wait 2 weeks, another contract, and that falls off. So I like to combine them and overlap them as much as possible so that you're not sitting around waiting for 2 weeks for me to figure out what I want next. All right, so the next part is tracking. So this is, you're building a lot of work, track it. This is gonna sound super nerdy, and this is where my sort of data side comes in. So I'll get 3 bids. I'll get a bid for characters, I'll get a bid for vehicles, and I'll get a bid for props. And if I looked at that and say, okay, 5,000 for characters, that sounds expensive, but if I'm doing a good job tracking my previous work, or if I've talked to friends and I can get some data, I can say, well, look, the average for characters is actually up around 7 to 9, so the bid we got is actually low. So there's 2 parts of that. That's cool, I think, that we're saving money, but also I do have to ask the question of why is it low? Did the team fully understand what I asked them to do and they're just gonna get in trouble later on? I don't want that because that doesn't do good for anyone. Then they'll make me a character and they lost a bunch of money because they put extra time into it. So I do have to ask, like, what's going on there? So next, vehicles, okay, cool, that bid's on target, that's great. So the prop bid's a little bit higher. And again, same kind of questions is, did they not understand and they're gonna say something in the process is taking longer than something I explained, so they misunderstood something in the process? Or did I find the studio in the region that's just a little more expensive because they're just that much better? Cool, I'm fine with that. It's just good to sort of see where the averages are and see where the bids come in, and then ask the sort of questions on both sides. Is it something, am I messing up, or is there something that I need to do to make sure that the teams I'm working with that do have a long-term relationship with me and aren't just underbidding to get my work? To me, it's much more about quality than anything else. Of that chart, like at Blizzard, our 100% focus is quality. We're not outsourcing to save money. It's about tapping into the world of talented people out there. It's purely for that reason. We always focus on quality. All right, so tracking. So when people come to me and say, hey, how fast can I get X of Y back? How many cars can I get back in 2 weeks? There's a lot of questions you have to ask yourself. And the same thing if I approach you and I say, hey, how many cars can you build for me? Or how many, I've got a month deadline. Well, hold on, number one, I would never do that. I give you a lot more warning than that. But if I give you an amount of time, but I'm asking for an unreasonable amount of things, make sure you account for extra stuff. So there's holidays. Is there a holiday between now and the deadline? Am I making sure that you're available, or are you, hey, I'm Blizzard, but maybe you're working for Microsoft for the next 6 months and I didn't know that. So I call you up and I'm like, hey, can you do some stuff for me? You're like, sorry, dude, I'm working for Microsoft on a book, I can't. And then I should have been in better touch with you. And then average asset time. So make sure you're tracking the assets to see how long it takes you to build a car. If I think it's 4 weeks, but in reality it takes 6, I should know that. I should be tracking the data. And I use a handy Outlook calendar for the different holidays and the different teams I'm working with to keep track of who's available and what the holidays are and what's going on, so that I'm not surprised and go to call up and, a team and say, oh, they're on holiday for some reason that I didn't even know about. So it's good to keep track of that. All right, next one. Again, so this is internal factors. So how fast can I get this many cars done or crates done? So there's 2 parts of it. There's production, and then there's actual contract creation side. It's so funny that it took me 3 years to sort of figure this out, and this stuff takes time. It's not very exciting, not very glamorous at all, but paperwork takes time. So in the pre-production side, it takes a while to come up with ideas, especially cool ideas. You're gonna want to iterate on that. What does that car look like? Well, maybe we don't want wheels. Maybe we replace those wheels with hover pads. Concepts, then, okay, once I come up with an idea, I've got to draw the idea. And then after that, I got to do the blockouts so that then I can provide the artist a starting point from that. That takes time. The next one is bidding. So I'm going to ask you to build these 10 cars. I got to tell you about them. You wait a few days for you to look over it and make sure that you are giving me an accurate estimate of how much time it would take to build these. Because I don't want to screw anyone. I want to make sure it's reasonable and you fully understand, and that if there is something going on, ask me questions. If you don't get a part of the process, then bring it up and ask, so that because when we start working, I want to make sure that you get it. Legal, like I say, yeah, the bid's approved, and then it takes me like 3 weeks to get the contract created. I have to be honest with my boss about that when he comes asking for assets, and I have to be honest with you guys, like, hey, like, we might not start for 2 weeks because it sucks, but the lawyer is on vacation. Okay, that's fine. It's just more things to keep track of. And the last one is countersignature. So I send you the contract and you send it back to me and you gotta sign it. Like FedEx takes time to send the papers. It sucks, but we gotta do it. All right, so just things to keep in mind sort of as you're going forward. Oh, this is cool. So this next one is about forecasting. So taking all that data I've tracked and all of the the assets and pricing and times and all that sort of stuff, and now I get to share some super secret Blizzard information with you. No, I'm sorry. I don't get to share any of that with you. So the crazy part is that's actually a real graph, just I can't show you any of the actual what it means. But the cool part is if I'm doing a good job in tracking all this data, I have spending over time, I have how much assets cost on average, I have total cost of how much I've spent this month. So when my boss comes to me and says, hey, what are you thinking about spending for next year? I can say exactly what I think and predict in a very accurate manner. Or even if I'm providing, let's say I'm a freelance artist working for Blizzard, it's still good to track this stuff, because if Grayson comes to you and says, hey, like, how long does it take you to build a car? I know I'm only paying you for 4 weeks, but how long does it actually take? And if you can tell me, like, dude, it's taken 5.2 weeks, I'll be like, wow, we need to fix that. So tracking is not just good for me, I think that's good for everyone. I know it's not super exciting, but I think it's super important in the job that we do. It is art, and it is a creative process, but this is also still a business, and I want Blizzard to be in business for a long time, and I want you guys as artists to be in business for a very long time, so let's make sure that we're keeping the lights on and keeping everyone fed and happy, and so that you can spend time with your kids and go on vacations. And let's see, another thing is, we'll talk a little bit more about this later on, but there's a thing that I call friction cost. So when an external team builds the asset, there's a friction cost. So I don't make art, but I cost Blizzard money. So that sort of goes into the calculations of how much does it cost to build this asset? Because I have to pay for the external artists, I have to pay for my time, I have to pay for my senior artist time, we call them supervisors. So how much of that goes into the total cost of creating an asset? And I'll show you a formula later on that'll sort of help explain that a little bit. So this is more about tracking. So I've got 3 sort of people that I'm working for. My customer is the game development team, and so they ask me, or what I need to know from them is, what do they want and when? So I need to make sure I stay on top of that. The financial folks, how much am I spending on? And my team, who do I need to get the job done? So I make sure I've got to balance all these things, and it's sort of fun to me to wear multiple hats, but I do have to realize that at any point in the day or in the week, I am serving several different people. I need to make sure the external teams are happy, I need to make sure my team is happy, and I need to make sure the development team is happy and having fun. So let's talk a little bit more about team structure. This is my group. They're called GRIP, it's just a cheesy word, just so I wanted a cool logo. But it just means Global Resources for Interactive Production. But I have a cool, like, Russian-looking logo. It's scary and cool. All right, so the structure for my team is it's me plus a whole bunch of art supervisors. And the art supervisors are there to help. They are there to be your sort of swim buddy, your partner in making art. So I'm going to talk a little bit quick, because we're running a little bit late on time, but how does it work and why? How does it work? So here's the development team, here's the external artists, there's how my team works. So we sit with the development team, but our only job is to communicate with the external artists. Without GRIP, the external artists communicate directly with the development team. So that's not ideal. The situation of that is you're communicating with people who are not hired to do the job that they're doing. They're working with you and they're providing feedback and they're providing documentation. They weren't hired to do that. Maybe some of them are good and they're excited to do this and they're passionate and they want to help. But maybe some of them are just like, I was hired to make cars. I was hired to make props. They're not bad people. They're just being asked to do a job that they weren't hired for. So I think that causes a whole bunch of non-ideal situations. It doesn't do good for you guys because you're not getting the contact and the support that you need. And it's not good for the development team because all of a sudden they're being asked to do split duty, and that's not good for anyone.
All right, so why be a grip supervisor? I think number one is that it's a direction opportunity. So people work inside of a studio for a long time. I want to lead people. I want to step up. What's the next? How do I advance in my career? This is a really cool way to have immediate direction opportunity. Inside my team, I only have 3 factors. I have time, I have money, and I have like what we want to build, so sort of quality. How we do that is essentially totally up to my team. So I will say, we have 10 cars to build, we have 2 months to do it, here's your team, that's in different places around the world, go. And then it's up to them how they want to get it done. So it's a really cool direction opportunity. Variety is really cool, because 1 month you may be working on vehicles, the next it's weapons, the next it's concepts. So it's really fun. It breaks things up. You're not just making cars for the rest of your life. Ownership is huge too, because that sort of part that I mentioned to you, where I leave it up to them. If they want to build 5 cars themselves and outsource the other 5, sounds good. However they want to handle it. If they want to handle all the blockouts and then get the external teams to do it, if they want the external teams to do the blockouts, and go from there. Really, at the end of the day, I'm not going to tell them how to get it done. I just want to make sure that me as the outsourcing team inside of Blizzard provides that service to the development team. So this is talking a little bit about friction. So think about this a little like if you had internal artists, you would provide a pod lead for them. So if you had 20 assets, but think about 20 assets in terms of like you have 20 people creating assets at the same time. And if you have the amount of work that needs to get done to those assets when it comes back to you is, let's say, 1 day per asset, you're going to want 2 art leads for the 20 external people. This will vary based on the complexity of the asset. So if you're building characters, the friction cost is going to be a little bit higher because of the detail level of the characters. So you can maybe do, so this is 1 to 10 right now, essentially, is what you're looking at. But you can I would go down for characters. So I would say, if 1 character lead, you should probably only leading 6 people externally. But if you're doing props, maybe you could go a little bit higher. Maybe 1 person internally can manage 15 externally. It just sort of depends on the situation. And again, if your friction cost goes over 15%, something bad is happening. So if I'm having to do more than 15% of the time of work when the asset comes back, something's going wrong. I'm not providing you guys with enough direction, or there's something else going on. I need to start asking questions. And 9 times out of 10, it's usually my fault because I didn't provide enough information, or something is unclear, or something like that is going on. So why it works? The team is invested in the workflow. They get the direction. They are providing examples and documentation to help the external creation of the assets, as well as videos and feedback. But essentially, they're responsible for the efficiency of this. So the better that they do their job, the easier their job gets. If I suck at my job and I don't send you enough information, then you're going to be asking a bunch of questions, then my job gets harder. So it's really in their best interest to make this much more efficient. So this is, remember this chart from before, so this is my team, how we work with the development team, but it's really this. And the key behind a lot of this is it's artists working with artists. So the internal team trusts my team because they're artists. They know that anything they touch will be up to their standards. And then when you guys are working with my crew, you're talking to an artist. You're not talking to a producer. This person knows how to build the art themselves. So you could be like, hey, I'm getting weird normal map errors when I'm ripping. What's going on? And they have the answer for you because they've gone through it a bunch of times themselves. So it's not just this sort of producer that passes on the information to someone else and then comes back to you 3 days later. You've got an artist on Skype saying, oh, that's weird. Let me work through it with you. So it's a true partner in this process. I'm going to go through this fast because essentially no grip is bad. You lose a bunch of time from the internal artists. You lose flow. A lot of times I've seen it, us versus them, like, oh, it's just the external team. It's ridiculous. It's such a, it's a silly thing, but I think, and you also leads to expensive contracts in terms of stuff takes longer. I don't provide the right feedback, so it takes longer to do, so then you have to ask for more time because there's more durations. All right, so on the good side, efficient feedback, because I'm here all the time to provide feedback. Development team stays focused on, they do only what they can do. You stay in better sync together. You guys know what we want to build and how we want to do it, and you're acting more like internal artists. And the contracts are much more efficient because of that. All right, the last part is the brains at work. So again, I sort of really like this concept of like, this is not just a production plan. We are all creative, driven, awesome, talented artists. We are not robots. So there's a guy, I took a class at work that covered this idea from this book. David Rock wrote this book called Managing with the Brain in Mind. So it's how to lead your team, understanding that we're all different, we're all human. It's not just ones and zeros. So it's basically a threat reward system that he named SCARF. And the idea behind that is a couple different things. So the first one is status. And the idea behind status is our relative importance. So at work, I want my relative importance to others. I want to know that I'm important and valued and that sort of thing. Next is certainty. I want to be able to predict the future. So at work, if I come into work every day and I don't know what's going to happen in 6 months, that's going to stress me out. Next is autonomy, my sense of control over events. If I feel like I'm going into work and I'm completely at the whim of my boss or the situation, like, again, that's not a good situation to be in. Next one is relatedness, my sense of safety with others. So, do I feel safe and connected to my team? Do I feel like I'm valued? Like I can ask questions? It's safe to fail? Like it should always be safe to fail. And the last one is fairness, our perception of fair exchanges between people. So, if I bring a problem up, I want to know that people are going to treat me with respect and not just be like, hey, that's stupid, shut up. Like that's silly. So I want to know, like, hey, that's a good point. I'm really happy you brought that up. So I want to feel like I'm being treated fairly and the people around me are being treated fairly. So I think, yes, I know it's work, and yes, I know there's money and time, and there's all this data that I talk about. But at the same time, I think you really need to demand all those points. You need to demand it from your boss. I know that's sort of counterintuitive, but you want to make sure that you feel connected and know and can relatively predict the future as much as possible. I know it's still game development and it changes, but you should be asking this from your boss and from me. If you work for me, I want you to ask this from me all the time. From your team, so I have a team that works with me. I want to make sure I offer that to them as much as possible, that I think about this process as much as I can, and not just, hey, you guys are robots, do these 10 things, go. It doesn't work like that. Here's an interesting part that I really want to stress to people that working with external teams, is make sure you treat your external teams the same exact way. I know they only exist on emails and Skype and they're not standing in front of you, but you have to still treat them like people, and it has to be, they're all, again, not sitting next to you. That's okay, but you just have to remember to treat them fairly. And here's the hard part, is you have to do this all the time, and not just when it's easy. Yeah, the game's going great and we're making tons of money. This is cool. It's easy to treat everyone with respect and all that sort of stuff. But you have to do it when it sucks. When you're like, wow, we messed up last week. That really sucks. You still have to treat everyone with respect. You still have to guarantee them as much. You still have to predict the future for them as much as possible, even if it's negative. So make sure you think about this all the time. All right, to recap, do your homework. Know what you're getting yourself into. Build a proper team to handle the process. And then don't underestimate soft sciences. Don't forget about that we're humans. Do your research, build the team, don't forget humans. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for coming out. I really appreciate your time. And I think we might have 5 minutes for questions. Yeah, cool. Let's do 5 minutes for questions. Yeah, I can answer anything about my team or a little bit about Blizzard. I don't know very much. Yeah, jump up to the mic. There's one there and one there. Anything? Cool. All right, this is random extra stuff like software that I use at work, so I thought it was fun. Anyway, thank you guys again. It was awesome to be here. Thank you guys. Oh yeah. Sorry. Go for it.
I know that you talked about it, but the Blizzard has a lot of games, and all of them different, but it all has the same thing. They polish to extremely high level. So how do you do this? How? Just every game is like each pixel on its place. It's like perfect. Like I have no idea how you do this.
it's really weird. I had sort of had the same perspective. So I'm relatively new to Blizzard. I've only been there for 3 years. There's people that have been there for like 15, 16 years. So I came in with the same mindset of like, Blizzard is perfect. How is that even possible? Like there must be something in the water. And after being there, it's sort of weird for me because there is nothing special that we do differently than anyone else in the industry. We just care a lot about every single pixel. And we argue and fight and debate and talk and we go back and forth on every little piece of art in the game. Their main character, Tracer, or one of the main characters in the game, Tracer, I don't even remember how many times it's been completely redone from scratch. Widowmaker, the sniper in the game, like just last week we changed some of the jawline on her because it didn't look just right. So we iterate and iterate and iterate till it is perfect. And luckily we're in a situation where we have the luxury to do that. So I totally understand that not everyone has the luxury. You have to put it in the box. You have to sell. You have to actually keep the power on. But iterate as much as you can. And when we put it when we put it on the shelves or we release a patch, we're still not happy with it. Like we stay up at night saying, how can we make this better? So really, there's no magic sauce. It's just like caring a lot. It's a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Yeah, we got 2 more. I'll do him first and then you next.
I'm asking from a perspective as a student. How will you, as a producer, solve conflicts within your team and miscommunications between the contractors and your overall vision of the game?
So the question is, how do I solve misunderstandings and conflicts? Okay, cool. Everything is different. I just have to break down what the problem is. And again, this sort of goes back to being human, where I just talk to the people that are having a problem and be like, hey, what's going on? Are you upset? Is there a problem with the delivery? Is the tools crashing? And so it's a lot of just me investigating why it's happening, not to place blame, but to just uncover what is causing the problem. So then once I find what's causing the problem, usually it's just as easy as like, hey, did you know about the documentation over here? Or, you know what, I know it sucks we're iterating on this again, but how about this? How about we do one more and we'll call it done after this? So no matter what happens, this will be the last one. And it's really just about it's about approaching the situation of being human, just sort of being like, let's get through this together. I'm in it with you. Let's solve it together. I'm here to help you solve it, and if you need help solving it, I'll do whatever it takes to solve the problem for the project, as well as solve the problem for the team members on both sides, right? So if you don't understand, you're like, Grayson, I just really don't understand the feedback that's coming from one of your supervisors. Cool, that's fine, tell me. And I'm here to help you solve it. You're not placing blame on anyone, it's just the problem isn't working, or the production isn't working, and communication is key. So tell me, I help fix it. And in a way that's not like, why did you bring up this problem? It's like, cool, thanks for bringing up this problem. We solved it together, and the project is better because you brought this to me. Or we're happier working together because you asked this question. So, does that answer the question?
Yes.
Cool, awesome, thank you. And there's one over here.
Yeah. Hi, the Overwatch is looking pretty cool right now.
Awesome.
Okay, so we are a small studio, and we are kind of lacking on the art side. So just now you were showing a map. You have artists all over the world. So I'm just wondering, where do you find all these artists, and what's the criteria do you have to choosing them?
It's a really good question, and it's everyone's sort of surprised when I say this, but like I just troll like polycount, honestly. So like ArtStation and polycount, if you pop up on the weekly recap of polycount, like I'm gonna find you. It's really funny that the experience that I had actually a few times when I first joined Blizzard. So I had done outsourcing before at Sony, and I was like, okay, I know how to do this. This is gonna be awesome. And I rolled into Blizzard. I'm gonna work with all these teams that I'd already worked with before. And I realized I was like, oh man, none of the teams I'd worked with yet are up to Blizzard standards. So I had to find totally new teams to come up to the Blizzard sort of standard of quality. And so I'd be trolling Polycount and ArtStation and CG Talk and all these websites, all these online communities. And I would find this artist and yes, this is the person, we need to hire this person. They're already working on WoW. All right, I gotta keep looking. But really, like, the short answer is find where all the artists hang out, whether it's whatever online community you can find, whatever the one you click with, whether it's CG Hub, no, CG Hub's gone, but ArtStation or Polycount or any of those. Find where really good artists are that are working and doing good stuff. Learn from them, and then make sure that your art is as good as what they're doing. And if you're doing that, and if you're posting online, then again, like I'm gonna find you. And the other way to do it is just come to events like this and say hi, show me your portfolio. And what do I look for? Honestly, it's just talent. If you're an amazing artist, then sort of the rest doesn't matter. So if you kick ass at what you do, then I want to work with you. If you're a great person, then hell yeah, I want to work with you. And then it's just about making the connection, whether it's posting up on Polycount or whether it's tracking me down at an event like this. And then it's just then we try. We start working. The one thing I forgot to mention is we always start small. Whenever I start with a new studio, it's crawl, walk, run. I might say, hey guys, let's work together. Let's try one asset. I want to make sure you like how I provide feedback. Make sure that you understand what I'm asking you to do. And then make sure that I like the way you guys are producing the work. And there's two sides of it, right? Start small and then build up. So once we get one asset working, let's build 2, let's build 4, let's build 6, and go from there. I know we went way over time, but is there any other questions, or should we wrap it up? Okay, cool, we'll wrap it up. Anyway, thank you guys so much. These questions were great. Thank you for coming.